United Airlines CEO has announced that he wants to make COVID-19 vaccines mandatory for all United Airlines employees. That's what we're going to be talking about in today's video. What's going on, guys? Saturday morning. You guys can join me for my cup of coffee here while we cover this story and cover this article. If you guys watch the channel regularly, last week, I think it was last week, early in the week, we made a video kind of talking about how Instacart, Dollar General, and Aldi we're all going to be paying employees to get the COVID-19 vaccine. But thus far, nobody had said it was going to be mandatory. But United Airlines CEO has said he wants to make COVID-19 vaccines mandatory. And right now, he's kind of trying to rally the other airlines to do the same thing. In the article, he kind of says, I realize this is a controversial topic. And he essentially says, I don't think we'll be able to get away with mandating it if we're the only company or specifically the only airline who does require it. He said, so we need other people to get on board, essentially to kind of like force everybody to get it. So that's what we're going to be talking about in today's video. One thing that he did say that these other companies didn't say is I was wondering, some people do have adverse reactions to vaccines. I mean, that's just the reality. That's not to fearmonger or say vaccines are bad or anything like that by any means. But some people do have adverse reactions. And I was wondering, okay, if I'm an Instacart driver, you give me $25, but if my, arm is sore for the next week and I can't drive, you're not doing anything for me at that point. And United Airlines has said that if people do have adverse reactions to the vaccine, their paycheck is safe. So I imagine if you have an adverse reaction, you have an allergic reaction or something like that, and you didn't need to be out of work for another week, they're going to pay you for that other week because they're mandating it. And I haven't seen other employers say that they would do that. Here's why this is an interesting issue, right? Like business owners, CEOs are kind of being faced with this issue where you have one set of employees who say, look, my body, my choice. I don't think my employer should be able to force a vaccine on me. I'm not anti-vax by any means, right? But this is a brand new vaccine. I know they say a lot of testing has been done. We've got the best experts working on it. We've poured all this money into researching it. But there's one thing that money and experts and time and energy can't replace, and that's time, right? Like, if you want to mandate the flu vaccine has been around since the 1940s. It's been around for like 80 years. So potentially you have somebody who has a young child, got the flu vaccine in the 1940s. Today they're 80-something years old. We can see, okay, they lived to be 80. It didn't kill them. They wound up, getting married and having kids. It didn't sterilize them. We can literally see the entire life cycle of somebody who took a flu vaccine, but this other vaccine has only been around for a matter of months. And, the one thing that all the effort and time and expertise in the world can't replace is time. And we just don't have time behind this one. And I kind of hate how the narrative is like, if you don't want to get it, you're an anti-vaxxer, right? Like, I think most people are, okay with vaccines. Most people get their kids vaccinated. Most people don't have an issue with vaccines in general. But this is an all-new kind of vaccine. It hasn't been around that long. And I really don't blame people for being a little bit hesitant or being a little bit cautious. And another thing that's kind of interesting, my mom works in healthcare. My girlfriend works in healthcare. I have some friends who are nurses and things like that. And oddly enough, healthcare and the dentistry industry are not requiring employees be vaccinated, which is really kind of interesting because typically they are required to get the flu shot. A lot of times they have to get TB tests or STD tests and things like that if you work in the healthcare industry. So the healthcare industry seems to be an industry that has a little bit more control over your life or can force certain things. And even the healthcare industry isn't mandating people get COVID-19 vaccinations. I know in some long-term care facilities and nursing homes and hospitals, you have anywhere from 30 to as much as 80% of employees, nurses, healthcare workers not wanting to get the vaccine and not being forced to get the vaccine. So it seems kind of odd that an airline would force it if a hospital wouldn't require it of a nurse. But let's hop into this article. You know what? Okay, so here's why this is also kind of a touchy issue is as a employer, as a CEO, as somebody who owns a company, you have potentially two sets of employees that you have to appease. You have one set that says, look, I'm just not comfortable with it at this point. I don't want to get it. And so you want to try to appease those employees. But on the other side, you have employees who say, I did get the vaccine and I don't want to work next to somebody who didn't get the vaccine. So whose rights are more important, right? And then also you kind of got, this is kind of a no-win situation for CEOs. If you mandate the vaccine, you potentially take on the liability of anybody who has adverse reactions because you force them to take it. But if you don't mandate the vaccine and then you wind up having an outbreak at your workplace, in your facility, well, now you take on the liability of you caused a COVID outbreak and got people COVID. So, like, what's the right way to go? It's a tricky issue. So let's hop into this article. United Airlines CEO wants to make COVID vaccines mandatory for employees and encourage other companies to do the same. The key points from this article: United CEO wants to mandate COVID-19 vaccines for the company's more than 60,000 employees. CEO Scott Kirby said other companies should adopt a similar stance. And airline workers are considered essential employees and are more likely to receive vaccines before many of the general public. So getting into this, United Airlines CEO wants to make COVID-19 vaccines mandatory for employees and is encouraging other companies to do the same. It's a stance that differs from other airlines and companies in other sectors like retail and auto manufacturing. The worst thing that I believe I will ever do in my career is the letters that I have written to the surviving family members of coworkers that we have lost to the coronavirus, CEO Scott Kirby said at an employee town hall Thursday, a transcript which was reviewed by CNBC. And so for me, because I have confidence in the safety of the vaccine and I recognize it's controversial, I think the right thing to do is for United Airlines and other companies to require the vaccine and make them mandatory. And this I thought was an interesting quote, right? So kind of fuck what everybody else thinks. Because because I have confidence in it, I recognize it's controversial. And because it's controversial, I recognize that I'm going to have to force this on people. Because if I don't force it on people, there will be a percentage of people who won't get it. And just because he has safety and confidence in the vaccine, what if I, as a United Airlines employee, don't have safety and confidence in the vaccine? I guess I'm just going to be forced to take it, right? United had more than 60,000 active U.S. employees at the end of 2020 and has sent recall notices to some 17,000 other workers whose jobs were cut last year. Kirby acknowledged logistical challenges of getting staff vaccinated. Airline employees are considered essential workers and are likely to receive the vaccine before many people, but the rollout so far has been slow and chaotic, with the nation running behind targets. Airline executives have said widespread vaccinations will help revive air travel demand as carriers grapple with billions of dollars in losses. I don't think United will get away with and can realistically... Oh, this one's interesting as well. I don't think United will get away with and can realistically be the only company that requires vaccines and makes them mandatory, he said. We need some others. We need some others to show leadership, particularly in the healthcare industry. So he basically says, if we're the only company to do this, it's not going to happen, right? People will just say, if you're going to require this, I'll quit and go work for Delta, or I'll quit and go work for Southwest. So he wants everybody to get on board with this so that everybody is essentially forced and has their choice removed from them. In the staff note, it said working with government officials and healthcare providers to set up vaccine distribution centers at some of its big hubs. Some employees have been hesitant to take vaccines. It's certainly a sensitive topic all the way around. Michael Clem, president of the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers District 141, which represents fleet and passenger service workers at United, and said in an email, "We received some frustration from members who don't want to take the vaccine, as well as concern from members who don't want to work with somebody who doesn't take it." So which side do we try to appease here? This is kind of interesting. I started making a video the other day. I just didn't think the topic was interesting enough, but I think it's worth mentioning here. The article was about how unions are grappling with this, right? Unions have a responsibility to kind of stand up for the rights of their workers. And in a union, you're also going to have these two conflicting groups, right? You're going to have one group of people who say, I don't want to have, a health procedure. I don't want to have a vaccine forced on me. And then you got the other side of people say, well, I don't want to work with a guy who chooses not to take the vaccine. Which side does a union fight for? And I believe in this article, they said unless the union contract specifically addresses something like this, the unions don't necessarily have the power to force people to get a vaccine. Let's see. Clem said union members can file a grievance for any disciplinary action that results from their refusal to be vaccinated. If they object to being inoculated because of a religious belief or a disability, they can then file complaints with the Federal Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. The United Flight Attendants Labor Union, the Association of Flight Attendants, said its focus is on ensuring vaccine access for all crew members. Right now, flight attendants are in different tiers for access in each state. AFA spokeswoman Taylor Garland said in a statement, "We need a federal approach that prioritizes flight attendants as essential workers, facilitating interstate commerce." As far as what some other airlines have said, Southwest last week said currently we do not require employees to get COVID-19 vaccines, but said it strongly encouraged staff to do so. American Airlines has a similar approach, telling employees last week that we do not plan to require our team members to receive the vaccines unless vaccinations are ultimately mandated for entry to certain destinations. And I think that's like a little bit more of a reasonable approach. Like, we as a company aren't going to mandate this, but if as a flight attendant you fly the flight from the U.S. to Mexico and Mexico requires you have a COVID vaccine to enter the country, well, you know, in order to facilitate your job, you would need to get that vaccine. That seems to be a little bit more reasonable to me. Delta Airlines, meanwhile, said it's actively working with all of the states to understand how Delta employees will be prioritized in the initial distribution of vaccines. So it looks like Southwest and American said we're not going to require it. Delta hasn't really come out on either side of the issue. They just said we're trying to make them available to our employees. The Atlanta-based carrier has encouraged employees to get vaccinated. On Wednesday, the company told flight attendants their pay would be protected if they had a reaction to the vaccine that prevented them from working, and that they would get an additional 6 hours of pay after receiving the second dose of the vaccine, according to a staff note seen by CNBC. United told employees in a staff note this week to get vaccinated as soon as possible and not to wait for guidance from the airline. Some companies are trying to persuade workers to get the vaccine by offering additional pay. Yogurt and food company Chobani said it will give employees in its manufacturing plants up to 6 hours of paid time off to get the 2 vaccinations. So far, some retailers like Aldi, Lidl, Dollar General have announced similar plans to offer extra pay. Aldi said it would also like to open an on-site vaccination clinic in its warehouses and offices to make it easy for workers to get the shots and eliminate the obstacles of getting childcare or finding transportation. So it looks like that's the end of that article. I guess it's a good thing that employers are offering some perks to employees, but here's what it ultimately boils down to, right? Like, if you're somebody who's planning on getting the vaccine anyways, your employer paying you or making it available to you is just going to make your life easier, right? However, if you're somebody who isn't comfortable with the COVID-19 vaccine and doesn't want to get it, 4 hours, 6 hours, regardless of what it is, like, if you make $20 an hour and they give you 6 hours of pay, that's 20, 40, 60, 80, 100, 120. That's $120. If I believe that there's still some risk, or I'm not certain about the safety and efficiency of the vaccine, is $120 really gonna cause me to sell out my health, essentially? Not really. So I don't think this is gonna, people who are already going to get it anyways, this is a nice perk or an incentive for them, but I don't see 4 hours of pay or 6 hours of pay changing somebody's mind who has concerns about getting the vaccine. Let me know your guys' thoughts on this topic. Should employers mandate employees get COVID-19 vaccines? Should they not? Whose rights are more important, the people who don't want it or the people who don't want to work next to somebody who hasn't had it? It's a complicated issue. I try to kind of see all sides of it, and there's really no clean solution. Let me know your guys' thoughts, so drop a comment down below. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, and if you're not subscribed to the channel, click that subscribe button below and ring the bell. Thanks for watching, guys, and we'll catch you on the next video.